and welcome to episode 2 of Radical Healing and Recovery. I'm your host, Stephanie R. Garris. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and I'm a fellow traveler. I also have what we could call subclinical OCD. My brain is still OCD, but I do not meet the criteria for the disorder any longer because of my years of recovery work. And so today's topic is going to be about how OCD switches themes. That can actually be a good thing, and I'll explain why later. But first, I'll share with you a little bit of information about my own recovery journey. It might help somebody. Um, I have been planning to go on a trip pretty soon, and I'm going to take some days off work. And it might sound very trite, but I got to tell you, I'm a workaholic. I've always been a workaholic. I've always worked multiple jobs. And a lot of that is fueled by my workaholism and a sort of survival, OCD related uh, desire or fear. It really is a fear based belief that, like, I'm safe if I keep working, if I keep going, right? And also, I really enjoy my job and I get a lot out of it and I love helping people. But even back when I was a waitress, working multiple waitressing jobs, going to school, and a lot of us really kind of have to do that. And back in those days, I was in a situation where, I mean, who doesn't need to work and to earn their living, right? But there was definitely a sort of desperation and a fear that drove that behavior that I feel is still a big part of myself. So taking these days off work is going to be difficult, but it's going to be an exposure for me because it's going to help me see that, like, I don't always constantly need to be on and that I can ask for help and my colleagues will help me and that it's going to be okay. Right. And I actually don't know if it's going to be okay, but I already don't know if it's going to be okay. Right. So this is going to be an exposure for me. And I will actually, I plan on sharing about that. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. I will share with y'all what I'm doing on my trip and what comes up for me as I go along. Okay, so getting to the topic today. Now, don't forget, you can email me or you can write to me on Instagram or whatever and let me know if there's a topic idea that you want me to cover. I often do and have, when people request videos through TikTok, I usually do my best to try to cover that topic. Um, but yeah, I'm interested in knowing what other people want to hear me talk about. So, getting to our topic today, which is when your OCD switches themes. Now, a lot of us that have chronic OCD, we can sometimes have multiple themes, and we can sometimes really have one main theme that's very sticky, and that we struggle a lot with. And so, when we start recovery work, what a lot of people tend to notice is that sticky theme that they have been working on becomes a lot less scary, and we get a little bit more confident, right? Like, we're reducing those compulsions, we're working on our beliefs, and we're getting into that gray area thinking, right? Remembering that with OCD, there is that rigid black and white thinking, right? And in our recovery, we are moving more toward the middle, the gray area, the acceptance of the things that we can't control, right? So I always say step one is that awareness, right? And I'm really working on like almost like a 12-step-esque like recovery style program to help guide people. What stops me is that everybody's recovery journey is so unique, but I want to work on it because at least it could serve as a helpful guide. But anyways, I have said before, because somebody has asked me about it, I say level 2 is when you start to get that, more confidence, that original theme, it starts getting broken up, right? And now your OCD starts searching for other things to grab onto to scare you, right? And so a lot of people can feel like they're back at square one, or they're never going to recover, or they're doing something wrong. But this is really a part of recovery, right? And we're working to get to a place of recovery, where we can start to identify the trigger, the sud score, right? Like, oh, okay, I see that. Really interesting. I can't tell the future and I don't actually have control over that, right? We want to get the confidence in the recovered part of us. And what can happen is the OCD very much still believes, if we can look at that like it's a part of ourselves, right? It's our overactive amygdala. The OCD still, it's not quite sure. It kind of feels like it needs to continue to be in survival mode, right? So it's going to pick something else to try to get a reaction out of you. So it's going to scan and scan and scan. And right when it can kind of get you with that trigger, maybe it's a stressed out day, or maybe this is like, hitting something that's really important for you, right? And it's kind of like making that feel like it's under threat or in danger. And so that's a really great way for OCD to get you, right? Uh, and then it can hit you with the intrusive thoughts, images, urges, sensations. And so we want to be ready for that when we're in recovery, right? Is that when we start to feel better, we start to get that confidence, and then all of a sudden you're going to get hit. You're going to get hit probably with something new. For a lot of people, it's when it starts to attack your own recovery. So you're doing recovery wrong. You're never going to recover. This is actually a compulsion when really you're practicing response prevention. We've got to learn to live and ride out the discomfort that comes with those intrusive experiences, right? We know it hits and it's going to pass when it's going to pass, because what we're really working on in recovery is, part of it is sitting with the discomfort and letting things pass, right? Which that is something that we build. That's not a concept you're going to immediately get, right? That is something that you're going to gradually learn in time, right? So when this happens, it's really important to remember you're not back at square one. You're not, starting over necessarily. You have already built skills up for yourself that don't go away, right? Like we don't need to go back to third grade. We already like learned, if you went there already and did it already, you already know it, right? Yeah. Like, so and we keep up our recovery work, so we stay sharp, right? Like we keep up our exposures, we dispute when we need to, right? But we don't need to start completely all over, because we are building skills, and those skills don't just vanish, right? They just get challenged in a new way. So remembering the OCD equation, the mechanism, is always the same across the board, whether you had hit and run OCD, contamination OCD, relationship OCD, POCD, whatever it is, it's the same equation, right? Scary thought fueled by black and white thinking and labeling and the desperate attempt to attain absolute certainty, which does not exist, right? Coming to accept that we are vulnerable beings on the planet, right? Anything can kind of happen, but rationally speaking, right? Like we don't necessarily always need to prepare for disaster, right? There are some things that we can reasonably come to expect. However, that doesn't mean with 100% certainty that those things are going to happen. And that's part of recovery too, is coming to accept that we don't have control over everything. So it starts like this, right? You're going to get hit with an intrusive thought, image, urge, sensation, whatever, right? For example, it could latch to like a memory of the past. This is a really sticky theme for people. ROCD, or false memory OCD, right? Like it'll hit you with something that happened in the past, and it'll be like, it'll tell a story about it, and the story could be very convincing and what do we always say, right, with OCD? It feels so real. That's what everybody that has OCD says, is that it feels so real. And that's why it gets away with what it gets away with, right? It feels so powerful, but really it only has the power that we give it, right? people find it really helpful to imagine that it's this part, right? Like it's an annoying neighbor, or it's like a silly troll, or, it's this, I often depict in my videos, it's like this misguided, kind of clumsy, like helper that like wants to help, but like is not helping, right? Like, um, and it can be hard for some people to see it that way if you've been struggling with it for a really long time and you're suffering, right? So, to say like, oh, it's just this silly thing, right? Like we might not be in a place to receive that well, but we could start by just saying like, okay, it is a part of me that is sending these unhelpful signals, right? And when you get a little bit more confident in your recovery, you might be able to personify it or create an image about it that, you know, is a little bit more like detailed or refined, right? And some people name their OCD, right? Like, and so we can recognize when that trigger comes up, right? So, what I do see sometimes is that sometimes people will have more physical compulsions and obsessions, like with contamination or orderliness. And when that starts to drop, it'll start attacking your recovery. So it'll be more pure OCD, right? It'll start to attack your recovery or your relationship or your job or something. But we got to recognize that familiar pattern. Again, it's going to feel real, right? And it's just part of the recovery. I don't really know a lot of people that I've treated, and definitely not myself in my own recovery journey, where that switching doesn't take place. So it's really, you know, something to look out for and to be ready for, right? Like a lot of us get like disillusioned by what we expect recovery to be, because a lot of us can start to feel really a lot better if we've been suffering for a really long time, and all those symptoms are subsiding, right? And so we're like, yay, we finally get to feel peace, and it kind of feels like it's gone forever, and then you get smacked. And it's important to kind of be ready for that. I'm not saying that certainly that will happen, it may not, right? But remembering, right, like we're practicing that acceptance, we're getting with the gray area, we're saying like, okay, recovery wasn't supposed to be easy, right? And if I can learn to deal with this theme, I can learn to deal with this theme, right? Recognizing you're not alone in this. Like this is the way it goes, right? For folks that have OCD, you're not alone in it. And getting educated on like the different themes can be really helpful, because so much relief can come, like I see so much relief come over others, and definitely for myself, when you get like educated on the different themes, to know like, oh my gosh, like, okay, there's a name for this and I am not the only one, right? There's a lot of fantastic information out there, online, in literature, right? Like we can't overstate like the help that you could get from like a fellow OCD, an OCD coach, somebody that usually has OCD that wants to help other people with OCD, that's done some training or therapy, right? For somebody who specializes in OCD. Right. And so we can kind of start to do the recovery work, right? Like with that theme, recognizing that the more time and the more compulsions that we do, it's going to grow the theme, right? So if a theme starts, if we're kind of getting on it and like recognizing it, right? Like, and doing the best that we can to like track and reduce and dispute if we need to, then, we could sometimes prevent that from becoming like this big sticky theme. It's just part of recovery, right? A trap that people can fall in is believing like, okay, that theme was gone, and yeah, that was OCD. But this one is real, right? Like that sense of urgency, the black and white thinking, right? Those are the things that we really got to look out for. That's kind of like a reality testing, right? Like, hold on a second here. I'm searching for absolute certainty. I'm having black and white thinking. Like it's all good or all bad, or a failure, success, right? Or I'm predicting a very specific scenario and I am supporting it with weak evidence, right? Those things, like, those are tiny details that are supposed to support a really huge claim. Remember, big claim, very little evidence. It doesn't get held up, right? So those, like, when I always say it's a reality check. Boom, boom, boom. Use it as a reality check. Dispute if you need to. But the real work, right, is like learning to leave it alone. Yeah, we're working on our beliefs, right? Like our addressing our core beliefs. But the work, part of that work, what is it? The response prevention, right? We've got to learn to stop messing with it, because it's like scratching an itch and it's spreading, or it's just like smearing something on the wall. It's creating a bigger mess for yourself for later on, right? It's like, okay, let's keep this contained, right? It's all part of the journey. It's not going to be perfect, you know. And I think that's what a lot of us are learning in the recovery journey, is that like we learn by taking small steps. We are going to make mistakes. Things aren't perfect, and we can't immediately know everything. We just got to start. We've just got to keep pushing and keep moving. And as we go, we will learn. Oh, okay. Like I see, like, okay, I see like that how that became a compulsion. Okay, yeah, that's that. Okay, I get that, right? Wait a second. It's telling me right now, like doing the dishes is me doing a compulsion because I'm avoiding. But hold on, I actually do need to do these dishes. So, like, I'm going to go ahead and put that under the category of redirecting focus and going toward my goals and values, right? Because that's the direction that we want to start going in our recovery journey. Go toward your goals and values, right? So, and again, don't forget, you can send me your topic ideas. I could just talk about this forever. Like I could talk about OCD recovery forever and beyond, right? Because what happens, and this is something that like I want to keep talking about, because it's like what happens when we start recovering from OCD, right? Like, and we actually are getting really confident in our recovery, and we're not like OCD is not, the main thing that's going on in our lives anymore, right? Like, you know, we sometimes, like, this is one of the first times where we actually learn how to like regulate our emotions, for some of us, right? Not all of us, but for some of us, like, we're learning how to be angry, we're learning how to like stand up for ourselves, we're learning processing sadness, right? And other uncomfortable feelings, because a lot of us that have OCD, one of the hallmark features is that we don't like being uncomfortable. But unfortunately, being uncomfortable can be read as like a threat. Like that's a threat signal, right? So like when we have OCD, we're not just uncomfortable, or we're not just experiencing like an unpleasant emotion. This emotion needs to be gone. This emotion needs to be figured out. It needs to leave the body now, because it could be dangerous, right? And so that's part of the recovery too, is like sometimes learning those skills, learning communication skills, right? Learning emotional regulation. Sometimes processing things from the past that we haven't really fully been able to like sit with, right? Because we're in anxiety land a lot of the time. We're not able to really be present in our lives a lot of the time if we're in chronic OCD, because we're so busy like trying to figure out these equations and these problems, and like, oh, but this plus this equals this, and how can I get this out of it? Like all of that searching, and it's very stressful, and it takes us out of our lives. We're not able to sometimes focus on creating the life that we want. We're just busy surviving. We're just busy trying to escape. escape that life, escape the body, right? Oh, but it's so scary. Oh, I have to make it stop. And how can I make it stop? And how can I figure this out? And how can I make sure this never happens again? Um, that's the OCD game, right? Like, so when you start recovering, it's more sometimes than just la di da, okay, it's gone now. Like, it's like, oh, okay, like now I'm learning some other things about myself. Um, I don't want to overwhelm anybody, because once you like, I always say OCD is the top layer, and once you're confident in like managing that top layer, you can use those skills for like everything else. Right. So it's not like, oh, I'm starting over and over and no, it's like, oh, okay, well, if I can deal with anxiety, like I can also deal with these uncomfortable emotions. Right. So, um, something about me, I know I still do this. So, like, something about my OCD, I think, is like I always like to have a lot of drinks. Is that survival related? I don't know. I don't know. I like to have like, I at all times have like 3 or 4 drinks, and for some reason I feel like that's excessive and related to OCD. But maybe it's just, maybe I'm just a person who likes drinks. Maybe not everything is OCD, but there's something about it that feels a little desperate to me. Like the same way that OCD shows up, right? Like, oh, I need all these drinks, and like, what if I get thirsty, and like, da 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 da, you know. A good exposure for me would just be to just bring water. What if I didn't bring water? Oh my gosh. I mean, I'd be fine, but like, that would be a good exposure. See, I feel that. Like, I feel like, no, right? Like, there it is. You see, that's what I'm talking about. But all right. So going back to what we were talking about now, what do I always say? Like in the OCD recovery journey, or whenever we're working on ourselves, right? We're tiny steppers, right? Like Elton John wrote that song Tiny Dancer, but I changed it to Tiny Stepper, right? We're tiny steppers. We take tiny steps. That's how we learn. OCD tells us, no, you got to figure it out right now. If you don't figure it out right now, then you're never going to figure it out. Like that, you see the desperation and the black and white thinking, right? But when we're in recovery, it's a little bit each day, right? Getting into the gray, flexible space, right, of recovery. And so we're tiny steppers, right? Hold me closer, tiny stepper, right? Remember that when you're taking the tiny steps. Elton John's Tiny Dancer, we're going to change it to Tiny Stepper. And that's you, that's me, right? We take tiny steps. That's how we get better. So start where you need to start. Again, a little bit better each day. It starts with awareness. That's step 1. Do I know what step 2 is yet? And I don't have a definitive step 2. I'm going to make it. The reason why is because everybody's at a different point. Everybody's at a different place. Everybody's recovery journey looks different. I might be with somebody on awareness for a long time, right? And then we start identifying triggers, etc. SUD scores, exposures. But I say level 2. Level 2 is when you your themes start to switch because your original sticky theme is not as strong anymore. So you can start your recovery journey. There's hope in recovery. Like, you know, you can start today. You can start doing one tiny thing. Start with awareness, right? Start by creating awareness. Get real. Get honest about how often the OCD is showing up in your day, right? This is a compulsion. I am doing a compulsion. I am feeding my OCD when I do this, right? Even if you're not ready to make that change yet, creating that awareness is, you're moving. That's a tiny step, right? I'm taking the tiny step and I'm looking at myself and I'm going, this is a problem, right? I always liken OCD to like an addiction. Some people might not like that. I understand. It helped me because I could see, okay, I am doing this, right? Yes, I have the discomfort. Yes, I have the urge. Yes, like my brain is like, I didn't ask for this. My brain is literally telling me like this is really important, but I am choosing to respond, and I make it worse when I do that. that's real, right? Like that is like admit you have a problem, right? So if we can get real about that, and I understand, sometimes we're so bogged down and we're so like mired with the pain of like what it's like to have this disorder that like the idea of like starting recovery or that we are responsible for our recovery is hard, and it's feels insulting, and sometimes we're not always in the place, right? Not all of us are in the place to be like, yeah, like let's start this recovery journey, right? Like not everybody is, and that's okay. But some of us are ready. Some of us are ready to at least look at, okay, this is a compulsion, and when I do this compulsion, it fuels my OCD cycle. So tiny steps, right? And I really love when people comment and or message me and tell me about like a tiny step they took, or like how they're progressing on their recovery journeys, and like that's so cool. And then I'm like, okay, that's why I make these videos, right? Like, I want people to know who I am, and obviously I have a business, and like, I want to be, I want people to be like, hey, I think Stephanie would be, a good OCD therapist for me, right? Like obviously there's that part of it, but there also is the part of me that's like, I'm trying to reach the person that wants recovery, and maybe I can say it in a way that's going to be helpful, or if I could give them the information, right? No, that's huge. So if you're on the recovery journey and you're wondering why your OCD themes are switching, it could be because you're taking those tiny steps and you're just moving right along, and this is just part of it. I really want to thank you for being with me today, and if you've listened to this whole thing, cool. I'm the kind of person, I'm always looking for something to listen to. Just something easy or somewhat helpful or whatever, just to kind of have on in the background. So if this was that for you, or maybe this was just really something you're like, okay, this is going to help me with my recovery, that's great too. Like it's all wonderful. But I really love to know what you think. I'd love to hear your topic ideas, and I'm just going to keep trying to make these episodes every week. So yeah, just remember, it's tiny steps, and you're not failing. We just keep on moving. We just keep on pushing. Tiny steps to recovery. Alrighty. Well, I hope y'all have a good week. I hope your summer's going well, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.